She told me I was just a fallback. Now she's begging for forgiveness. Hey everyone. I've been sitting on this story for a while now, and I feel like it's time to finally let it all out. It's been a roller coaster, and I can't seem to shake the feelings attached to it. So here it is. My ex-girlfriend, Brittany, and I had been together for 2 years. To put it simply, I thought she was perfect. She was gorgeous, head-turning, model-type beautiful, and she had this infectious confidence that drew people in wherever she went. At first, I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. We were living the dream for a while. She was working part-time while finishing her degree, and I was holding down a full-time job. She moved into my house, and I didn't think twice about it. It made sense. I owned the place, and we had a future together, or at least that's what I thought. I took care of everything, bills, rent, utilities, while she focused on school. It wasn't a problem. I viewed it as an investment in our future. I was working long hours, but I didn't mind because at the end of the day, I had Brittany waiting for me. We were building a life together, or so I thought. The first few months of living together were perfect. We had lazy weekends, binge-watched shows, and went on spontaneous adventures. But gradually things began to shift. Brittany started becoming distant. At first, it was small stuff. She wouldn't wait for me to eat dinner, or she'd scroll on her phone while I was talking to her. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she needed some space. But then it got worse. She started going out more. She'd say she was meeting friends, and at first I didn't mind. Everyone needs their own life, right? But then it became a pattern. Nights and weekends, I'd come home from work, expecting to see her there, only to find the house empty. And when she did come home, it was like I wasn't even there. She'd barely speak to me. No, how was your day? Or, hey, I missed you. She would just go straight to her room or dive into her phone. I tried to bring it up, but every time, it was the same response. I just need some me time, she'd say, acting like I was overthinking things. But it wasn't just about the time she spent away from me. It was the emotional distance. She was checked out, and I was the only one who seemed to care. She never apologized for her lack of effort. There was no acknowledgement that maybe she had been neglecting me. She just kept going about her life like everything was fine. I didn't want to be that guy who was overly clingy, so I kept quiet. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't even about the money or the bills anymore. It was about respect. She was taking everything I had to give, and in return, I was getting nothing but an empty house and a distracted girlfriend. One night, I came home after a 12-hour shift, exhausted and barely able to keep my eyes open. The house was dark, and there was no sign of Brittany. I texted her, asking where she was. She replied over an hour later, saying, "Just out, don't wait up." That was it. No explanation. No apology. I stared at my phone, feeling this knot form in my stomach. What was I even doing in this relationship? I tried to make excuses for her. Maybe she was just stressed out, or maybe she needed some space. But I couldn't deny the truth anymore. She was pulling away, and I was the one still fighting for us. The next day, I talked to my friends about it. One of them said something that really hit me. "Dude, you're basically her sugar daddy without the sugar." I laughed it off, but honestly it stung. That's how it felt. I was paying for everything, her tuition, her car insurance, the rent, the groceries, and what was I getting in return? Nothing. I didn't want to admit it, but it felt like she was using me. I needed to talk to her. I needed to find out if we were still on the same page, or if I was just wasting my time. The next time we were together, I brought it up. "Are we still on the same page?" I asked. "Because it feels like we're not." Her response was cold. "What do you mean?" "Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. It wasn't even close to fine. I was putting everything I had into this relationship, my time, my energy, my money, and it felt like I was the only one doing the work. And that's when she hit me with it. "You know, you're pretty replaceable," she said, laughing like it was some kind of joke. "There are tons of guys who would love to be with me." I froze. I thought I had misheard her, but she just repeated it, smirking. "Don't take it so seriously. I'm just joking." but it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a punch to the gut. I tried to keep my cool. Is that really how you feel? I asked. But she just rolled her eyes, making it seem like I was overreacting. Oh my God, you're so dramatic. It's not like I'm doing anything. Guys hit on me all the time. It's not my fault you can't handle that. I felt my heart drop. This wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with. This wasn't the person I thought she was. I had been nothing more than an option for her, someone she could keep around while she explored other possibilities. The rest of the night was a blur. I sat there trying to process what she had just said, while she went about her business like nothing had changed. The next day, nothing was different. She kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened. She didn't bring it up again. I didn't know what to think anymore. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the one who was replaceable in this relationship. The days after that conversation with Brittany were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. The words, "you're replaceable," kept echoing in my mind over and over, like a broken record. I tried to push them out of my head, to tell myself I was just overreacting, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But deep down, I knew. She had said exactly what she felt, and I couldn't pretend like it didn't matter. We continued to live under the same roof, but it felt like we were miles apart. I could feel the emotional distance between us growing every day. I tried to talk to her, tried to fix things, but each time, the conversations felt emptier. She would smile, nod, and assure me everything was fine, but her actions spoke louder than her words. I couldn't ignore the fact that she wasn't giving anything back. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the time we spent apart. It was the way she made me feel invisible, like I was just a convenience to her, someone she could rely on when she needed something, but not someone she truly valued. One afternoon, a week after the replaceable comment, I came home to find Brittany sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She barely acknowledged me as I walked in, and I stood there for a moment, staring at her, unsure of what to say. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Can we talk?" She glanced up at me, barely meeting my eyes. "Sure. What's up?" "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day." I began, trying to collect my thoughts. "About how I am replaceable." She sighed, clearly annoyed by the topic, and set her phone down. "Oh, come on. Are we really going to keep talking about that?" It was a joke. I could feel the anger rising in me. It didn't feel like a joke. "You meant it, didn't you?" She looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Okay, fine. Maybe I said it wrong. But it's true, isn't it? You're always so serious, always acting like you're the only one who matters. I have my own life too, you know. I'm not just here to make you feel good." I stared at her, stunned by her words. She had just confirmed everything I feared. She wasn't interested in working through our issues, in making things better. She had already checked out. And I was still here, trying to save something that didn't even exist anymore. "You've been so distant," I said quietly. "You barely even talk to me. You go out all the time, and when you are home, it feels like I'm invisible to you." Her face hardened. "I'm not the one with the problem here. You're the one who's acting all needy. You want me to sit around and beg for your attention, but that's not who I am. I'm not going to drop everything for you. I have my own life, and you need to get used to that." I could feel the weight of her words sinking in. Every time she spoke, she was pushing me further and further away. She wasn't just telling me she didn't care about me, she was telling me she didn't care about us. She didn't want to fight for our relationship. She didn't even want to try. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. I had been trying to fix something that had already been broken. And for what? So she could keep using me while she played the part of the carefree, independent woman? No. I deserved more than that. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when you clearly don't care anymore." Her face flickered with something, maybe surprise, maybe frustration, but she didn't try to stop me. She just sat there, silently, watching me. "Fine," she muttered, as if it were no big deal. "If that's how you feel." And just like that, the last shred of hope I had for us slipped away. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't stay in this relationship where I was nothing more than a backup plan, someone she could keep around when it was convenient. I needed to leave. I needed to take back control of my life, to stop wasting time on someone who didn't even value me. I packed my things in silence, not bothering to explain myself further. Brittany didn't try to stop me. She didn't ask where I was going or what I was doing. She didn't even look up from her phone. I had become invisible to her, and that was all I needed to know. I walked out of the apartment with nothing but a bag over my shoulder and a heavy heart. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with an aching emptiness. But it was the kind of emptiness that came with letting go of someone who never truly cared, letting go of the fantasy I had built in my head. I wasn't going to be anyone's second choice anymore. I wasn't going to be replaceable. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free. It had been a week since I walked out of the apartment. A week of silence. I didn't expect Brittany to reach out. In fact, I didn't want her to. But deep down, I was still waiting for something, some kind of sign that maybe, just maybe, she would realize what she had lost and come to her senses. But there was nothing. She didn't call. She didn't text. It was as if she had moved on with no second thought. And honestly, it stung. A part of me had always believed she would come around, that she would eventually see the value in what we had. But after a week of absolute silence, I started to see things more clearly. I wasn't just the guy she had casually tossed aside. I was someone who deserved more. And no matter how much it hurt, I wasn't going back to someone who didn't appreciate me. I spent most of that week trying to clear my head. I threw myself into work, making progress on projects I'd put off. I hung out with friends who supported me. They didn't say much at first, just gave me space to talk when I needed it. It felt good to be around people who didn't make me feel like I had to prove my worth. Then, after a week of peace, Brittany showed up at my door. I hadn't been expecting her. It was late in the evening, and I had just gotten home from a long shift at the restaurant. I opened the door, and there she was, standing on my doorstep, her arms crossed, an uncertain look on her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, as if neither of us knew where to start. But I could feel the tension between us, the things unsaid, the hurt that still lingered. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft, almost tentative. I stared at her for a moment, trying to gauge whether or not this was something I even wanted to entertain. She had had plenty of opportunities to reach out before, and she hadn't. Why now? What had changed? "I don't know what there is to talk about," I said coldly, crossing my arms. "You made it pretty clear how you felt about me." Her face flushed slightly, and she lowered her gaze. I'm sorry, okay?" she said, her words coming out in a rush. "I messed up. I said things I didn't mean. I was frustrated, and I lashed out, but I don't want to lose you." I felt my heart twist at her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe this was the moment where everything would change, where we could start over. But then, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that words were just words. Words could be empty. Actions spoke louder. "I don't want to be someone's second choice," I said, my voice steady. "And I don't want to be the one who's always doing the heavy lifting. You said I was replaceable, Brittany. And I've spent the past week realizing that maybe I'm better off without someone who thinks like that." Her eyes widened in shock. "Alex, please don't say that. I didn't mean it." I was angry. I don't know. Everything felt like it was falling apart and I panicked. "But I don't want anyone else. I want you." "I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I was settling for you, but I was wrong. I should have been grateful for you, and I wasn't. But I'm here now. I'm willing to make things right." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I thought about it. I thought about the time we had spent together, the good moments, the laughs, the love. I thought about how it felt when I first met her, how I had been so sure she was the one. But then I remembered the way she looked at me when she said I was replaceable, how I had felt like I didn't matter to her. "I'm not someone's backup plan, Brittany," I said, stepping back, shaking my head. You can't just come back to me because things aren't working out with your other options. You don't get to just toss me aside and expect me to pick up the pieces. I'm not your safety net. She stepped forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Please, Alex. I didn't think about it like that. I was wrong, okay? I don't want anyone else. I want to be with you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it work. I know I messed up, but I swear I won't take you for granted again. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she had changed, that she really had seen the error of her ways. But as much as I tried to convince myself, I couldn't. I couldn't go back to someone who had treated me like an option. It wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't fair to either of us. Maybe you'll find what you're looking for, Brittany, I said, my voice softening but firm. But it's not with me. I deserve someone who sees my worth from the start, not when it's convenient. I'm not going to keep chasing after something that doesn't value me. I saw the tears well up in her eyes as she stood there, silent, processing what I was saying. But I didn't waver. I had made my decision. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I held up my hand, stopping her. I've already made up my mind, I said. I'm done. With that, I turned and walked back into my apartment, leaving her standing in the hallway. I couldn't help but feel a little sad. But I also felt something else, relief. It was the relief of knowing I was finally free, free from someone who couldn't appreciate me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward. It had been a few days since Brittany had come to my door, and I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. I had made my decision. I wasn't going back to someone who saw me as replaceable. But the truth was, even though I was firm in my resolve, the silence after she left was deafening. The apartment felt emptier than it had before. It wasn't just the absence of her, it was the absence of everything I had hoped for. I spent my days working, trying to drown out the thoughts that kept running through my mind. It was hard to stay focused when I knew that, at one point, I had been so sure about my future with her. Now, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next. It wasn't long before I received a message from her. It was short, but the words were enough to make my stomach turn. I miss you. I was wrong. Can we talk again? I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen, unsure whether I should respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to show her that I wasn't going to be that guy anymore, the guy who waited for scraps. But another part of me, the part that had loved her deeply, felt a pang of longing. She was admitting she had been wrong. She was asking for a second chance. Could I really say no? I thought back to everything she had said to me. You're replaceable. I was settling for you. Those words still haunted me. No matter how many times I tried to tell myself she was sorry, no matter how many times I wanted to believe her, the truth was right in front of me. She had never truly valued me the way I deserved. I decided not to reply. I wasn't going to let myself be swayed by her desperation. The reality was that I had been trying to make it work for too long, while she had been emotionally unavailable. I wasn't a backup plan, and I wasn't someone she could turn to when things weren't going her way. I was done. But Brittany didn't stop. She called me. She sent more texts. I couldn't avoid it forever, so I finally picked up the phone. The moment I heard her voice, something inside me wavered. Alex, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I know I messed up. I don't expect you to take me back, but I can't live with myself knowing that I let you go. I was scared, and I didn't know how to handle everything. I didn't appreciate you the way I should have. But I've changed, and I'm ready to show you that I'm serious. I didn't know how to respond. She sounded genuine, so much more sincere than she had before. But I wasn't sure I could forgive her for everything she had said. The truth was, I didn't think I could go back to a relationship where I was constantly questioning my worth. I didn't want to be the person who let their happiness be dictated by someone else's whims. I had learned that the hard way. I can't do this again, Brittany, I said, my voice steady. I've already made my choice. I deserve more than someone who only realizes my value when it's too late. I need to be with someone who sees me, really sees me from the start. There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she was going to argue, to try to convince me that she could change. But when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I understand," she said. "I wish I had realized it sooner. I'm sorry, Alex. I really am." I hung up the phone, and I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't that I was happy about how things had turned out. It wasn't easy to walk away from someone I had loved. But I knew it was the right thing to do. Chapter 5. Moving forward, 800 words. A few weeks passed after that call, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. I still thought about Brittany, about what could have been, but I was learning to move on. I had given her a chance to prove she could change, but in the end, it wasn't about her, it was about me. It was about realizing that I deserved someone who would never make me question my worth, someone who would choose me the way I had chosen her. One evening, while I was out with some friends, I ran into an old acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen in a while. Her name was Emma, and we had shared a few classes in college. We never really hung out much, but she was always friendly, always kind. That night, we talked for hours. We had an easy, flowing conversation, no pressure, no expectations. It was refreshing. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing more of each other. It wasn't anything serious at first. We went to movies, grabbed coffee, and just talked. It was nice. There was no rush, no stress. Emma wasn't perfect, but she was real. She made me laugh. She respected my space, and most importantly, she made me feel valued, not just for what I did or what I could give her, but for who I was. And the more I spent time with her, the more I realized that this was what I had been missing. I hadn't needed to fix anything with Brittany. I needed to fix myself. I had spent so long pouring my energy into someone who couldn't appreciate me that I had neglected my own needs. With Emma, I didn't have to do that. I could just be. And that was everything. Months went by, and my relationship with Emma blossomed naturally. We supported each other's goals, we grew together, and most importantly, we communicated. It was different from what I had with Brittany, better, healthier. I wasn't waiting around for her to see my value. I knew she saw it from the beginning.
She didn't need to say it all the time.
Her actions spoke louder than anything. And just when I thought life was starting to feel like it was finally moving in the right direction, I got a message from Brittany again. She was in town and wanted to talk. But this time, I didn't feel the familiar pang of doubt or regret. I didn't feel torn between what I had with her and what I had now with Emma. I knew, without hesitation, that my future was no longer tied to Brittany. I met Brittany at a coffee shop. She looked different. Her eyes were softer, her posture less rigid. She didn't seem as confident as before. There was a vulnerability to her now, and as much as I wanted to feel sorry for her, I didn't. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "And I just wanted to apologize. I was selfish. I hurt you, and I can never take that back." I nodded, but I wasn't angry anymore. "You don't need to apologize to me. I've moved on. We both have to. And that's okay." She looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to figure out what to say next. But there was nothing left to say. The past was the past. I had learned from it, and I had grown. And when I walked out of that coffee shop, I didn't look back. I had let go of everything that was holding me back, and I was finally free. The best part? I wasn't just free from Brittany. I was free from the version of myself who had allowed her to treat me like an option. I was free to live my life on my own terms. Looking back, I realized how much of myself I had given away in that relationship. I let Brittany's disregard for me shape the way I viewed my own worth. But through that painful process, I've learned something invaluable. My happiness, my value, can never depend on someone else's approval or affection. I had to stop chasing someone who didn't see me as a priority and start seeing myself as worthy of love and respect from the beginning. Moving on wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I've found that real love isn't about being chosen last. It's about choosing yourself first.